Mr. Shapiro, I'm going to assume you don't find this to be a threatening or harmful document.
I've brandished it at a few people myself, yeah.
Look, the college's defense when they arrested these students, by the way, they spent overnight in jail, 7 hours in jail for handing out constitutions. You said something earlier that struck me, that time, place, and manner regulations are being used to restrict free speech, because that's what the college said to these students who belong to Young Americans for Liberty. They said if you'd just filled out the paperwork, if you'd stood 100 feet over there instead of where you're standing, and if you'd done it at this time, we would have allowed you to hand out our nation's founding document. Can you speak to how time, manner, and place restrictions are being abused?
So most obviously, UC Berkeley did that with Ann Coulter, where they kept moving around her room and they kept saying they didn't have rooms available. They said the same thing to me a week ago. There was some public outcry, and now they're offering some rooms, which I hope that event goes forward. It's not rare. They do this a lot. A private university that did it was DePaul University. I was threatened with arrest if I set foot on campus. I actually showed up there, and a security guard told me, I asked him, if I move 6 inches forward, are you going to arrest me? And he said yes, and he had the sheriff of Cook County behind him. So this is, it's become a cover for ideological discrimination, because if Ta-Nehisi Coates wants to speak on these campuses, there's not going to be any problem. The administrators will make certain that time, place, and manner restrictions don't get in the way. And this is why I say, saying that the discretion of administrators is wonderful is all well and good, except that they very often are attempting to achieve a particular political end by using means that are normally legitimate. And that's definitely a dangerous thing. If you don't mind, I have a quick note on something that I think it was Mr. Lawrence was saying earlier about the damage that's done to students by various things that happen on campus, by threats of violence and this sort of thing. And obviously, everyone, I think, agrees that what happened to Taylor is unacceptable. But one of the things that I think should also be pointed out is we have a lot of other students in the crowd and administrators who spend an enormous amount of time pushing stuff like white privilege means that you must accept that you are subordinate in terms of your view because of identity. This also has some lasting damage with regard to First Amendment exercise and with regard to how people perceive the freedom of the country. And I understand that this is universally held belief among university educators that we have to accept the guilt of particular races or particular sexual orientations for discrimination that's happened in the past. But when you teach a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old people this, you shouldn't be surprised when, number one, they go into hiding with their viewpoint, or number two, they become frustrated. It's an absurdity to suggest that you can tell people that their viewpoints are out of line because of their identity. At the same time, you're telling other people that their viewpoints are completely in line because of their identity, and that any assault on their senses must be protected or prevented at any cost.
Well, I would just like to point out in closing that the group, Young Americans for Liberty, that is handing out constitutions on campuses all across the country, has changed free speech restrictions on 25 campuses just by handing out this document, not by setting fires because they didn't like the speaker or throwing rocks through windows, but by handing out this Constitution. And I am inspired that there are young people who are inspired by this document, and it should never be illegal to hand out this document. Well said.